Hey guys, I'm Yuruzi. Part 5 of What If Naruto Was the Red Flash. Naruto finds out about Uzumaki Clan when he was 4 years old. Naruto swears to rebuild the home of his clan and finds all the family he has left. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 31, A Traitor. Naruto. He walked outside and soon saw his friends waiting for him, his ninja emblem tightened in his forehead. Shikamaru had his forehead protector tightened to his right arm just above the elbow. Hinata had hers around her neck, and she slightly blushed when she saw Naruto walking outside. Ino had her forehead protector around her waist, her right arm covered in bandages. OJ Naruto, congratulations. Shikamaru was the first to congratulate him. Thank you Shikamaru, congratulations to you all as well, he replied, smiling with a kind tone. Choji and the others said their part, and Naruto turned to see Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba missing. Shikamaru noticed him looking around. Sasuke left soon after he got his emblem, Sakura followed him like usual, and Kiba said that his mother promised him to teach him a new jutsu if he passed. The pineapple head replied and yawing, already tired and finding the whole thing troublesome. Hey Naruto, we are going to barbecue. Do you wish to come? Choji asked. Naruto saw the others nodding their heads except Hinata. Of course, sounds fun, he replied and turned to Hinata, hoping to help her with her shyness and courage. Hinata, do you wish to come? He asked, smiling. Everyone's eyes turned to the Hyuga heiress, who blushed, her face looked like a tomato, and she took a step back and started playing with her fingers. Oh you want me to komi with you and Naruto-kun? She asked, avoiding his face and mostly his eyes. She felt her heart beating faster than before, and she couldn't believe that Naruto was asking her out. Naruto wasn't sure how to answer. He didn't see Hinata as a love interest, he saw her as a good friend that could become brave and have it easier to talk to people and become a great kunoichi and great head clan. If he said yes, he might give her the wrong idea. He's inviting you, why do you ask? Because you're our friend, and we want you with us, Shino said, noticing Naruto's nervous mood and his mouth opening and closing. Naruto sighed in relief and made a mental note to thank Shino later. Oh, Hinata whispered, slightly disappointed but decided to go with them. It would be an excellent chance to spend time with Naruto-kun. I accept, Hinata replied, still playing with her fingers. Ino then pointed with a finger towards the entrance. Let's go then, she shouted, smiling and walking towards the entrance of the academy. Shikamaru slowly shook his head and murmured, woman, under his breath. Choji kept eating his chips without a care in the world and looking forward to the barbecue. Shino kept quiet and glanced at Hinata before turning his eyes to the road again. Hinata was glancing at Naruto, who was talking with Shikamaru about their shinobi carrier and other similar things like that. She wondered if Naruto would look at her the same way she looks at him. His handsome face and red hair and blue eyes like an ocean made her feel butterflies in her tummy whenever he was close to her. Naruto, who do you think will be your sensei? Shikamaru asked, holding a hand on his pocket and the other behind his head. If he could choose, he would always choose maybe Asuma Sarutobi since he had met the man a few times and played shogi with him. The man was wise, strong, and didn't look like someone that took the job of jonin as pointless and time-wasting. Shikamaru hoped he would be with Choji in his team and Naruto, who would be the assault of the team. But he knew there was never a three-men team, and a girl would definitely be in his team. From all the girls in the class, he found the least troublesome to be Ino and Hinata. Naruto looked to be thinking about it. Ino leaned closer to hear their conversation. I would want Kakashi-sensei, but knowing Hokage Gigi, he probably won't put him as my sensei since he has already trained me, he replied, thinking that Kakashi as his sensei would be excellent. The only down part was his being late habits. But that could easily be fixed with a few merciless seals. I hope to be in your team, Naruto-kun, Ino suddenly said and hugging Naruto's arm tightly and leaning her head against his shoulder, while her fingers were softly touching his palm, and her eyes were focused on his developed muscles. Hinata felt a hint of anger when she saw how close was Ino to Naruto, and the redhead wasn't telling her to go away or anything like that. Instead, she saw him blush. Naruto blushed slightly by the close contact with Ino and didn't help that his arm was in the valley of her breast, and her fingers caressing his palm wasn't helping. We arrived, Choji suddenly shouted and walked inside before everyone else. The others soon followed. Naruto sat with Shikamaru and Choji, finally breaking free from Ino, while Shino sat at their right, and Ino and Hinata sat on the other side of the table. Naruto smiled but could feel the hatred gaze and the emotions of many people around the barbecue restaurant. Their glares were as clear as day. Shikamaru noticed the glares too and wondered why was that. He had seen them for a long time and had asked his father what the deal with it was, and he had responded that some people were just too stupid and some just wanted to blame someone for something that he wasn't his fault, to begin with. Shikamaru had understood he wouldn't get more answers from his Tusan and had dropped the subject but at the same time wondered what he meant with what he said. Soon the meat was served, and Choji was the first to start cooking it, followed by Shikamaru, Naruto, and Shino. Ino looked conflicted with eating it since it might make her fat and make her less attractive. Hinata, on the other hand, wasn't that hungry for roasted meat. Naruto, can I ask you something? Ino suddenly asked, looking at the redhead. Naruto stopped moving the meat around the barbecue and turned his eyes to Ino, who slightly blushed just by his look. Yes? Naruto replied, waiting for what Ino wanted. Ino looked conflicted and started touching her chin with her index finger, her eyes showing what Naruto thought was need. Ah, what kind of girl do you like? She asked, finally finding the courage. Naruto raised his eyebrows at the question while Shikamaru murmured, troublesome, and slowly cut the meat with a knife. Hinata looked interested as well. She wanted to know what kind of girl Naruto-kun liked. And this will be a rare opportunity to find out more about him. I like girls that if they are kunoichi take the job seriously, girls with dreams and goals for their future, caring girls, funny, generous and maybe a bit hothead, but Naruto kept the last part to himself. Naruto then looked at Ino again and saw her spreading 3 of her fingers. She smiled. I have 3 of these traits, she replied, smiling. Naruto knew Ino was right a bit, but when it came to girls, but one thing that he highly disliked were fangirls. Even his mother had warned him to never go with a fangirl. Naruto's thoughts were on Fu and Ashera, and he couldn't think of anyone else besides them. He remembered Fu's beautiful eyes and personality, her smiles, and her caring nature. Her beautiful face, her melodic voice. Ashera's beautiful hair, her determination to become a good kunoichi, and her willingness to go as far as possible for her dream, but still a caring person who helped people and wanted to protect the people she loved with everything, and most importantly, she had a dream. A dream Naruto shared with both Ashera and Fu. Naruto rubbed his head nervously. He stuttered, not sure what to say without hurting her feelings. Ujino, how about we talk about literally anything else, like about with who you wish to be in the team with, Shikamaru suddenly said, getting annoyed by this troublesome subject. Naruto sighed in relief and thanked Shika for the safe. Ino glared at the lazy friend but decided not to say something out loud. After they started eating their food, Naruto noticed his meat was in a bad state. It hadn't been cooked well and looked old. He sighed, annoyed at this and just decided to not ruin the moment. Here, Naruto, Choji said, giving him some of his meat, understanding his meat wasn't of good quality. Naruto-kun, do you think our first missions will be outside the V village? Hinata asked, not knowing their missions as Genin would be. Of course, she had heard how the missions were classified and that D-rank missions were harmless. But she hoped that they wouldn't straight up go outside and fight against other ninjas. I don't think so. Tsunade-sen mentioned many times that the D-rank missions were about doing chores, like gardening, helping old people and maybe chase an evil cat as she likes to call it. He replied with a slight chuckle remembering Tsunade's story about her life as a genin and the mission to capture Tora, the devil cat. Everyone at the table knew of Naruto living in the Senju clan and having Senju and Uzumaki names. That's good to know, Choji said while eating his food. After the eating was done, Naruto and the others walked outside. Well, I'm going home. My mother promised me the best dinner if I passed the test and became a genin, Choji shouted happily and rubbed his stomach. Shikamaru chuckled slightly and turned to Naruto. I'm going too, see you later, everyone, Shikamaru said, waving his head and walking alongside Choji, who was rubbing his hands. See you later, Naruto said to the others and walked away. Ino soon followed Choji and Shikamaru since their homes were near her compound. Shino glanced at Hinata again before walking away and saying good day to Naruto and Hinata. The Hyuga girl said good day to Naruto and walked away and played with her fingers. While walking away, she had a determined look on her face. Naruto was walking to his compound when he felt Mizuki's chakra close to the Hokage's office. He wondered what that idiot was doing there and probably nothing good. He sighed, annoyed, and decided to check it out. Naruto always knew there was more to Mizuki than just hating him. The moon's light was shining through the forest, Irika was running through the woods. He couldn't believe that Naruto would do something like that. He kept running and wondered why. Naruto was the best genin of the village. Why would he need to steal the scroll? It didn't make any sense. Soon he spotted the redhead jumping from tree to tree. Out of breath and angry, he shouted, "What do you think you're doing out here, Naruto?" His scarred face and brown ponytail stood out in the moonlight as they bounced off of his green Chunin vest. The new genin stopped and looked down at Iruka with a creepy smile. "You found me, Iruka, you still haven't lost your talent at running," who he thought was Naruto spoke with a creepy tone and grinning like a maniac. Iruka's eyes widened when he understood who was talking. "Mizuki!" he yelled furiously, and the one who he thought was Naruto transformed and turned into Mizuki, who started laughing maniacally and holding his stomach with his hand. "What you've done is despicable, Mizuki, just tell me why." "That's just what I can't wrap my head around. Why betray the leaf, your home? Why blame Naruto?" Iruka asked, moving his hand down his side, pulling out a kunai. Mizuki just looked at Iruka for a moment before bursting out in laughter. "Why? You ask why? I'll tell you why. When we were children, we both lost our parents to that demon brat, so I decided to befriend you, Iruka. After all, we were the same. That was until other people began treating you better than me, including our friends, the third Hokage, and even people we didn't know. Why did you deserve all that compassion yet I received none? I was left to rot, practically ignored. Is that fair? No. And now I'll have my revenge on this village by handing over that scroll to, let's say, Orochimaru, and I think he will be pleased with the means to destroy Konoha. He promised me power, and I will have it one way or another. His curse mark will make me stronger than I have ever been before." As Mizuki finished, he broke into a burst of manic laughter that filled the area with a crazed sound. "I'm sorry you felt that way about our friendship, and you may say that everyone ignored, but I didn't. That's because our friendship meant something to me, but now you've forsaken that trust, I have no choice but to kill you," Iruka said, launching himself at Mizuki. "Oh, please, you can never defeat me," he replied, laughing even more. "That might be true, but I can." Suddenly, a voice spoke, and both men turned to look at the redhead of Naruto Uzumaki. His hand was resting on the pommel of his katana. Iruka paled when he saw his student here. Mizuki hated him, and he might try to hurt him. He knew Naruto was strong, but Mizuki was a Chunin, and Naruto was a new genin and no match for a Chunin with years of experience. "Naruto! What are you doing here? Run away, you're no match for Mizuki," Iruka shouted, concerned for his student well-being. Naruto just looked at him and gave him a look. "You serious?" The young Uzumaki was about to reply when Mizuki started laughing again. "The demon is here, this day just got a whole lot better, I have the scroll, and now I can finally kill you, demon," he shouted manically and pointed the finger at Naruto, who looked bored out of his mind. Mizuki then thought to make it even better and add salt to the injury. "Do you know why the village hates you, why they will never see you as their own, why it doesn't matter what you do? You will always be hated," Mizuki said, laughing even more and pointing an accusing finger at the village behind Naruto. Iruka paled even more. This night could worsen. He didn't want Naruto to know, it was forbidden, and Naruto was still young to understand. He might hate the village and the Hokage for keeping it a secret. "No, Mizuki is forbidden," Iruka interjected and shouted at his former friend. He wanted him to stop. Naruto looked even more bored but decided to tag along to annoy him even more, while Kurama looked annoyed by Naruto. "For Kami's sake, just deal with him already," he said, bored and thinking of ways to deal with Orochimaru's sex slave. "Why does the village hates me?" Naruto asked, ignoring Kurama's words and acting as if he didn't know that already. "Everyone knows except you. Iruka's trying to hide it from you, even now. He'd do anything to shut me up," Mizuki said with a laugh at the snarl that escaped Iruka's lips. "Don't tell him, it's forbidden." Iruka tried to shout. "The decree is that no one can tell you that the nine-tailed fox is inside of you. The fox spirit that killed Iruka's parents and destroyed our village has taken over your body. You are the nine-tailed fox," he said, but instead of Naruto's shocking face, the redhead started laughing as he had just told him the best joke in the whole elemental nations. Naruto stopped laughing and looked at Mizuki again. "You serious?" he asked. Iruka looked confused as to why Naruto was laughing and not like being in shock or even crying. "I have known that since I was 3 years old, even a stupid person would understand it by now. I mean, everyone calls me Demon Fox and other various names that connect me with Kyuubi. It doesn't take a genius to understand that Kyuubi is sealed inside me, even the most stupid kid would understand it by now," he stated. Suddenly his face changed from playfully to serious in a second. His face got so cold that both Irika and Mizuki felt shivers of fear in their spine. Naruto released his whole ki to Mizuki, who was sweating buckets and breathing heavily. Even lifting a finger felt hard for him. He felt a considerable weight in his entire body and his heart beating on his throat. I always knew you hated me, but you tried to put the blame on me and betray the village, and that's not something I will tolerate, he stated and pulled out his sword. Before anyone could even blink, Naruto was behind Mizuki in his sword close to Mizuki's neck, his skin bleeding. The white-haired Chunin felt his blood freeze like ice. He wanted to move and kill the demon, but none of his muscles was moving. Irika saw Naruto behind Mizuki, and even before he could lift a finger, he saw something piercing Mizuki's head. Looking closely, he saw the point of a sword coming out from his mouth bleeding and the blade covered in blood. Naruto moved his sword up and sliced half of Mizuki's face in half with a quick move. The blood covered his whole chest and the blade, his head started falling apart, and his lifeless body fell to the ground like garbage that he was. Irika had seen death before, but that was way too brutal for his taste. He threw up, and after calming down, he looked up to see Naruto cleaning the blood from his sword. Irika couldn't understand how could Naruto not feel sick after killing someone. He didn't know that Naruto had already been killed before. After cleaning the sword, he turned his focus to Irika. The ANBU will arrive soon, he stated with a brighter tone, and his sword was clean now. Irika walked slowly towards Naruto after he jumped to the ground. Naruto, thank you for saving me, he said happily and slightly saddened that his student had to do that. Naruto just shrugged his shoulders. Don't worry about it, Irika-sensei, unlike the others, you didn't hate me, you saw me as a normal boy instead of the demon fox, he replied, smiling at his sensei. Irika smiled back and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. I'm proud of you for being my student, he stated, and they both turned to see three ANBU suddenly appear close to them. Irika hoped they weren't here for Naruto. He immediately stood in front of Naruto and opened his arms. Naruto didn't do it. He's innocent, he stated, and hoping they would trust him. Naruto eyed the ANBU in the front who had a ghost mask and no eye holes. Don't worry, Irika, the Hokage-sama knows Naruto-san wasn't the one who stole the scroll. We are here to return it, he stated with a demanding tone. His hands had weird purple marks around his palm and a purple circle in the center of his palm. Naruto could hardly feel any emotions coming from the man but knew this one wasn't one of Danzo's loyal dogs. They were like stones, without any feelings. This one had but could very well hide them, and his chakra level was medium Kage level. Irika sighed in relief and turned to Naruto, who grabbed the scroll and threw it at them. Tell Hokage-sama that I said hi, he said before shunshin away and leaving leaves behind. Irika was again impressed that Naruto knew how to shunshin, but remembering Naruto's speed, he shouldn't be surprised anymore by him. You're a very good shinobi, and I can't wait to see what you become in the future. Chapter 33, Genin of Konoha. Naruto. The redhead saw Irika-sensei walking inside the class. Usually, most of the students would still keep talking, not bothering that Irika was here, but today would be decided the teams, and everyone was waiting in anticipation to see with who they would end up with. Everyone fell silent as Irika walked into the center of the class and cleared his throat to gain everyone's attention. We have been together for 7 years, and now the time has come for you to become shinobi of the Hidden Leaf and make your country proud, Irika said, holding back his tears. His eyes glanced at Naruto, who was listening to his speech. Irika talked with them for a few more minutes. Shikamaru had fallen asleep and wasn't thinking of what Irika said. Everyone except Naruto looked bored and couldn't wait until Irika was done with his boring speech. Irika finished and glanced at everyone in the class. Ino talked with Sakura for God knows what. Kiba looked bored and was leaning his head against the back of the chair. Shikamaru was sleeping, and Choji was eating chips. Sasuke was probably busy daydreaming the day he would kill Itachi, and Naruto looked focused on what was happening. Anyway, I will start announcing the teams, he shouted, and that grabbed the attention of everyone. Even Shikamaru was awake for this part. Naruto listened, and soon Irika announced the teams up to Team 7. Team 7 is Naruto Uzumaki Senju. Every girl in the class fell silent right now. Almost everyone except Sakura and a few others held their breath. Naruto was the hottest guy in the class, and every girl wanted him in her team. Some licked their lips at the thought of being in the same team with Naruto. Shikamaru, Choji, and Shino focused since they wanted to know if they would be on the same team as their friend. Shika highly doubted it since Ino Shikacho was S famous Konoha team, and the third Hokage would most likely want another generation of the same team. Ino hoped to be on the same team with Naruto for 2 reasons. He was the most attractive guy in the whole academy, and she knew for sure he was probably the strongest genin, giving her a chance to train with him and become stronger and spend time with him. Sakura Haruno, many girls shouted "No," including Sakura, who couldn't believe that the god was so cruel to put her on the same team as Naruto. Naruto fought the urge to scream out loud, why was he in the same team as the worthless Banshee? Why did she even graduate in the first place? Naruto, of course, knew that the academy had gone downhill since the civil council had a bit of power to change the academy, making the passing exam much more effortless and not learning anything hard in the academy. Naruto couldn't understand why the hardest thing to learn in the academy was simple clone jutsu, transformation jutsu and substitution jutsu. Why they knew nothing about Fuin jutsu in the academy was beyond him if it kept going like this. After like 50 years, Hidden Leaf Village will be lucky to have a seal master of level V or lower. Why does the god hate me so much? Naruto mentally asked himself. Don't worry, Naruto, if it is necessary, we can just kill her and bury her body somewhere. It is not like anyone would notice her disappearance, Kurama suddenly said with an evil smirk on his face and chuckling slightly. Naruto's ears perked when he heard his voice. Oh Kurama, you're right and probably is the best advice you have ever given to me, but hopefully she won't be that much of a bother to me if I just ignore her annoying flat ass, Naruto replied, smiling. And Sasuke Uchiha, Iruka-sensei announced the last member, followed by the annoying look and disapproval of every girl in the class except Sakura, who raised her fists in the air celebrating. She pointed the finger at Ino. Take that Ino pig, true love wins always, she shouted happily and glanced at Sasuke, expecting him to be happy to be in the same team with her, except he looked bored and annoyed. Ino didn't care that Sasuke was in her team, but she was annoyed that Sakura got Naruto. Shikamaru looked slightly confused since both Naruto and Sasuke were in the same team, the two strongest genin in the academy, while true that Sakura was next to useless, still. At least Naruto is in my team. But why exactly do I need that useless Banshee in my team? At least Ino knows more than her and doesn't go around screaming like the end of the world is coming, Sasuke thought, annoyed and glancing at Ino, while Ino held her head down. Your sensei is Kakashi Hatake, Iruka finished and turned his eyes to announce teammate. Naruto raised his eyebrows in surprise, holding his hands behind his head. He didn't expect Kakashi to be his sensei. The redhead understood that Kakashi would most likely train Sasuke because of his Sharingan. While Sakura didn't care who was her sensei as long as Sasuke was in her team, she held her hands clenched together in front of her face, her eyes closed and imagining Sasuke asking her on a date or kissing him. Sasuke, on the other hand, remembers the name from Naruto. Ha! Naruto mentioned Kakashi is a prodigy, and I read that he's a well-known shinobi around the world, he will be good to teach me, Sasuke thought. Teammate is Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Hinata Hyuga. Your sensei is Kurina Yuhi, Iruka announced, completing it. Kiba raised his hands in the air, happy that a beautiful girl like Hinata was in his team while Akamaru was barking at him to not act like 2 years old. Shino's face didn't change, but his eyes glanced at Hinata to see her reaction but saw that she had lowered her head in disappointment. Hinata had wished to be on the same team as Naruto-kun, but it seems that wasn't the case. She knew she could still spend time sometimes with him, probably on holiday. The Hyuga heiress found some encouragement that Kurinai-sensei was her sensei. Team 9 is already working. Team 10 is Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akimichi, Iruka-sensei announced loudly for everyone to hear. Almost everyone expected Ino to scream, but instead, she just rolled her eyes and minded her own business. Shikamaru was happy that his best friend was on his team but grunted that he would deal with Ino. Troublesome. Your sensei is Asuma Sarutobi, he finished, and his eyes went to announce the other team. Naruto smiled at Shika since his troublesome friend had told him that he wanted Asuma to be his sensei. Shikamaru smiled at Naruto and was happy to hear that. Listening to the members of each team, Naruto understood the reason behind the team placement. So my team is the assault team, but why exactly is Sakura in my team? She knows next to nothing about assault. Team 10 is the supporting team, with Shikamaru acting as a strategist, Choji as the muscle, and Ino to gather information and distract the enemy with her clan's ability. And teammate is the tracking team. All the members can track Shino with his bugs, Hinata with her Byakugan, Kiba with Akamaru, Naruto thought, and Shikamaru had understood it as well. Iruka-sensei finished and left the room. Now, all they had to do was wait until sensei arrived. Naruto groaned, knowing how long it would take for his big brother to arrive. I guess we better get comfortable. Kakashi-sensei has a bad habit of always being late for at least 2 hours, Naruto said, letting Sakura and Sasuke know. The Uchiha fought the urge to facepalm and decided to read a jutsu scroll from his clan until Sensei arrived. Sakura had her eyes on Sasuke and decided to go and try and talk with him. Naruto opened his bag and decided to read about Fuinjutsu until Kakashi arrived. The door opened, revealing a beautiful kunoichi and a guy with a beard walking behind her. Naruto felt the similar chakra of the Jonin, and he could tell just from his chakra alone that he was Asuma Sarutobi. Naruto didn't recognize the woman but blushed slightly at her face. He couldn't help but notice that she was beautiful. "Teammate with me," Kurenai announced, and her eyes noticed Hinata, who was giving glances at who she knew was Naruto. She hoped the poor heiress would find the courage to ask Naruto on a date. "Oh, we have a hot Jonin," Kiba shouted happily and looked at the body of the Jonin. Kurenai had a tick mark on her forehead, and Asuma fought the urge to slap the disrespectful boy. Akamaru barked at his owner to shut up. Hinata, Shino, and Kiba stood up and followed Kurenai. "Team 10 with me." Asuma started smoking a cigarette. "Troublesome," Shikamaru whispered before standing up and following him. Ino glanced at Naruto and soon followed Shika and Choji. Naruto saw them leaving and soon, Sakura and Sasuke were the only ones left in the class. Naruto changed the page and was reading about the combination of different seals. Despite being level 10, he couldn't combine more than 2 seals, and he hoped there were books in Yuzushiogakure for combining 3 seals. But that didn't stop Naruto from experimenting and having seals blow upon his face. Sakura was busy trying to get closer to her Sasuke-kun. She slowly and quietly changed seats and got closer to her man of dreams. Sasuke was reading a scroll about a fire jutsu of rank B. Fire style, raining fire. Cost, medium Chunin chakra level. The jutsu sends multiple small fireballs towards the enemy. As he was focusing, he noticed a useless girl approaching like a stupid puppy dog in the corner of his eyes. Sasuke thought. "Sasuke, do you want to hang out after this?" Sakura asked, blushing. Sasuke was literally thinking of what exactly he did in his past life to deserve a banshee like her in the team. Most have been horrendous, he thought, and kept reading the scroll and decided to train on it after he was done here. After 1 hour, Kakashi was making his way to the class after paying his respects. Usually, he would be late for at least 1 more hour or even 2 more hours, but he knew Naruto didn't take kindly to his being late habits. So he decided to go early this time. Naruto was still reading and had a blanket paper on his desk and using a brush to make a 3 combined seal in the class. He hoped he would be able to succeed. Sasuke was still reading the scroll, trying to memorize everything, while Sakura was sitting on the desk closest to Sasuke, who looked annoyed by her constant attempt to have a conversation with him. Naruto could feel Kakashi-sensei coming, so he sealed the paper and the book away. Sasuke noticed and decided to stop reading. After a few seconds, the class door opened, revealing a white-haired shinobi with a mask covering his face, from his nose to his chin. His right eye was not covered, while his forehead protector covered his left. Before Kakashi could say anything, Naruto pointed the finger at him. "You finally arrived, old man Kakashi," he shouted. His voice boomed around the class and even the corridor. Kakashi looked at Naruto, annoyed that he still was using his disrespectful nickname. Sasuke and Sakura looked confused at how Naruto called their sensei. "My first thought of all of you, you're boring, and the redhead is annoying." He started pointing the finger at Naruto, who was smiling from ear to ear. "In the roof, you have 10 minutes, he stated thoughtfully before he shunshin away. "See you there," Naruto said, waving at them before he disappeared and left leaves behind. Sasuke made a mental note to learn that jutsu as soon as possible before running towards the stairs, followed by Sakura. Kakashi looked up to see Naruto in front of him sitting at the stairs. He smiled and pulled away from his book. "Ooh, Naruto, it is good to see you," he said, smiling behind his mask. Naruto smiled back. "Didn't know you would be my sensei," Naruto stated happily that Kakashi would be his sensei. "I myself was surprised. I expected Hokage-sama to put you in the team with Shikamaru or someone else," Kakashi said and noticed Sasuke and Sakura arriving. "Naruto, how do you arrive here before us?" Sakura exclaimed, her hands clenched together and glaring at the redhead. The young Uzumaki rolled his head and shook his head. "I shunsin Banshee," he replied, annoying Sakura. She raised her fist and tried to hit Naruto but stopped when Naruto turned his cold blue eyes at her. She felt a shiver in her whole body and felt cold. Her heart started beating in her throat. Without saying another word, Sasuke sat at the center, and Sakura was at his right, looking at the brooding Uchiha with hearts in her eyes. "So I guess you 3 are going to my squad from now on, huh? Well, how about we introduce ourselves, maybe share some likes, dislikes, hobbies." "Okay, well, how about you go first?" Then sensei, Sakura piped in. Okay. I am Hatake Kakashi. I have no intentions of telling you my likes and dislikes. As for my dream. He drifted off before snapping back to his students, I have few hobbies. Naruto snickered at his sensei's response. Your turn, Pinky. Well, I like, she said as she turned to look at Sasuke, I dislike, Naruto baka. My dreams are, she continued to stare at Sasuke, and then giggled when she said, and my hobby is. Oh great, all three men thought, mentally facepalming. My dream is, she said again, looking at Sasuke, she giggled and blushed at her face. Naruto and Sasuke shook their heads at her idiomaticity, while Kakashi thought why and how exactly she became a genin. Still, knowing that her mother is in civil council, he shouldn't be surprised. Well, you next emo. Sasuke looked annoyed by his nickname but decided to just get on with it. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, I like a few things, and I dislike a lot of things like fangirls and people who whine all the time. My dream know what I will achieve is to kill a person, restore my clan and make my parents proud of me, he stated, and half of his face looked covered by a shadow. Naruto understood he wanted to kill Itachi, while the redhead seemed to notice the worried crease appear on Kakashi's face, then it was his turn. You next, Naruto. Since it was his introduction, Naruto decided to say his full name. My name is Naruto Uzumaki Senju Namikaze, I like. But your name is Uzumaki Naruto baka. Geez, how are we going to survive when you can't even get your name right? Sakura interrupted, chest puffed out proudly to know she'd gotten another one up on the baka Naruto. Actually, Sakura, that was my mother's last name. I learned that my father's surname was Namikaze, but I've only ever heard of one Namikaze living in Konoha silly, and that was the Yondaime Hokage. She drifted off as the two academy graduates stared at Naruto dumbfounded. Yep, the Yondaime was my dad. Sakura looked perplexed while Sasuke had just a raised eyebrow. Before he could get cut off again, Naruto quickly continued, anyway, my likes are ramen, learning new techniques, learning Fuinjutsu, having friends. Ashara-chan and Fu-chan. My dislikes are people who assume they are better than others, those who can't tell the difference between a kunai and a scroll. I dislike traitors and rapists, and my dream is to rebuild my homeland, restore my clan, and make my parents proud. My hobbies include Fuinjutsu, training, reading, and cooking. Oh, and can you not tell anyone who my dad was? I wanted you guys to know because you're my team, but I don't want heaps of other people to know yet. Kakashi wondered what exactly Naruto meant with rebuild my homeland. Sasuke looked interested when Naruto mentioned that he wanted to restore his clan. Kakashi nodded, yes, that is wise, I hope you heed these words, the Jounin said to the other. Yes, what I was going to say was that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., I want you to meet me at Training Ground 21 for your final examination before becoming permanent genin in this squad. And don't eat breakfast beforehand. What? Sakura exclaimed, I thought we'd already passed and graduated, wasn't that what the academy was for? This girl is really annoying me, and I hope I can somehow return her on track before she dooms herself or a friend. Yes, but you still need to pass this final test if you want to be Shinobi of Konoha, he said before disappearing in a whirl of leaves. Naruto stood up and turned to his teammates. I will eat breakfast. It sounded more like advice than an order, Naruto stated before disappearing. Sasuke noticed what Naruto said and decided to listen to his advice. But before he could go away, Sasuke-kun, do you want to hang out? Sakura asked, blushing heavily. No. Naruto. He soon reached his home, walking inside the compound. I'm home, Naruto said, smiling. Shizen came. First, she gave him a big hug, that Naruto returned. It's good to have you here Naruto, Tsunade is still in the hospital working, she replied. Well, I will go to my room to study, Naruto stated before he left. The redhead reached his room and quickly returned to his seal, trying to get it to work. That night multiple explosions happened in Naruto's room. Tomorrow. Naruto was leaning against a tree, writing on a blank paper. Sakura ran over to Sasuke, not paying the slightest amount of attention to the fact that Naruto was there. Still, before she could start harassing him, Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves, his face planted in a book that Naruto by now knew was Ika Ika. Naruto couldn't understand why so many people read the book, every old guy he knew was a pervert. Okay, guys, today you have to pass a test to see if you truly have what it takes to be Genin of Konoha. If you do not pass this test, it is within my rights to send you back to the academy or remove you from the program altogether. At this, both Sasuke and Sakura looked shocked and betrayed that Konoha would do such a thing. Naruto, however, had a stern expression, thinking over what had been said so far. I have here 2 bells. I'd like you to do your best to take them from me. Whoever doesn't have a bell in 3 hours will not pass. But sensei, they are 2 bells, and we are 3 genin, Sakura interjected. I see you can count, Sakura. It means one of us will have to return to the academy, Naruto stated with a cold tone that impressed even Kakashi. Sakura looked shocked and perplexed, while Sasuke looked confused. Naruto's right, Sakura, one of you will return, Kakashi said, confirming what Naruto told as accurate, and then put a clock at the top of a wooden pole. Alright, well, can we begin, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked, and gone was the humorous tone and now was changed to serious. You may, he said, turning his attention back to Ika. All 3 genin disappeared immediately, leaving Kakashi alone. His eye looked around to notice Sakura against a bush, close to him. Sasuke had climbed up a tree and was staring at him, and just as he predicted, he couldn't detect Naruto anywhere. Well, Naruto, I hope you go easy, the white-haired shinobi murmured under his breath before deciding to go after Sakura first. Meanwhile, Naruto stood at the top of a tree using his godfather's camouflage jutsu not to be detected. There's no such thing as 2 genin teams, that means the test is something else, Naruto thought out loud. He knew his big brother liked strong teamwork in a group. Hell, most of the jonin had their test revolves around teamwork. He punched his palm. I see you want us to work together, he whispered before jumping in the ground and deciding to see if Sakura or Sasuke would agree to work together. While this was happening, Sakura was busy running around the forest screaming Sasuke-kun at the top of her lungs. She couldn't wait until she found her Sasuke-kun. She knew her true love was around here somewhere. Together they would defeat Kakashi-sensei, both graduating and leaving Naruto Baka in the dust. As she was running, Sakura heard a sound behind her only to see Sasuke slowly walking behind a tree. She beamed and was about to get closer when she saw her Sasuke-kun having several arrows piercing his back in horror. A few had pierced him and came out through his stomach. She could see blood leaking out of his stomach and chest. Blood poured out his mouth, and his teeth were red from blood, his ears and nose dripping blood, his face pale like milk. His eyes were bleeding, and his right eye had almost pooped out where she could see the tiny veins around the sclera of the eye. His left eye had almost gone upwards, inside his head. SS Sakura Run Tataktake in our Naruto, he tried to say before his body caught on flames and started burning. His skin turned black from the fire like coal, scorching him. His eyes burned from the fire, his hair burned, and Sasuke fell to the ground burning. Sakura started screaming, falling to the ground and throwing her arms and legs around. Sasuke heard a scream and knew that it was Sakura. Arriving, she saw her kicking and screaming. Kakashi-sensei stood close to her, shaking his head. Sasuke quickly attacked Kakashi with several kunais and shurikens from behind from a nearby tree. Kakashi, of course, dodged the attack by using Kawarimi no Jutsu, after which Sasuke then engaged Kakashi in a taijutsu battle, where Sasuke showed impressive taijutsu skill in fighting against Kakashi by pushing him back and having him on the defensive. Although when one looked closely, one could quickly tell that Kakashi was only playing with Sasuke and wasn't taking him seriously. Realizing this, Sasuke jumped away and threw several more kunai at Kakashi, who skillfully dodged them. Although as he did, he fell for a trap that Sasuke had laid out for him where several more kunais and shurikens were fired at him from a nearby tree when Sasuke cut the rope line with one of the kunais that he had thrown at Kakashi a moment ago and activated the trap. As Kakashi dodged the kunais and shurikens, Sasuke quickly raced over to Kakashi and once again engaged him in a taijutsu battle, but as Kakashi blocked all of Sasuke's hits, he quickly realized that Sasuke wasn't just attacking, he was trying to get close to him so that he could grab one of the bells. Whereupon, realizing this, Kakashi saw that Sasuke was about to grab one of the bells on his sides. Seeing this, Kakashi quickly jumped away in time, where Sasuke was only able to touch one of the bells. At the near capture, Kakashi sighed slightly with relief. Well, now that was close, this kid is fierce, and I have to admit he does have a lot of talent as well, he thought. After nearly getting the bell, Sasuke decided to take things up a notch, where he quickly did a few hand seals and then cried out Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, fire style, great fireball technique, where he expelled from his mouth a massive orb of roaring flame. When the massive fire hit Kakashi, Sasuke quickly ran over to him as the flames died to get the bells. Unfortunately, when Sasuke got to the spot, he could not find Kakashi. Where did he go? Behind me, above, thought Sasuke as he looked all around each direction for any sign of the Jonin sensei. Looking for me, said Kakashi as he grabbed Sasuke's right leg from underground as he used Otan, Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu, Earth-style, double suicide decapitation technique, and pulled him underground, leaving just Sasuke head above ground. After which, Kakashi came out from the ground and kneeled at Sasuke, who was glaring at him and angry at being humiliated in this way as he could not move. "Hello there," Kakashi said innocently, looking down at Sasuke, who glared at him. "Kakashi-sensei." "You're a bold one," Kakashi replied, smiling at him. Before anyone could say anything else, Kakashi saw red chains coming from a bush. He recognized them and jumped upwards towards a branch. They reached very close to his leg, and he landed on the branch only for the tree to have several paper bombs. Shit! A massive explosion happened. Kakashi came out from his hiding spot after his clone got destroyed. He saw Naruto had rescued Sasuke since the hole was empty now. He rubbed his hair and knew it was fun while it lasted, but wondered if Sasuke and Sakura would work with Naruto. Away from him, Sasuke saw Sakura still on the ground, probably unconscious. Naruto put his hand on her forehead, and she immediately stood up, and her eyes widened. She had tears streaming down her cheek, but when her eyes landed on Sasuke, she screamed and threw herself at him. Sasuke tried desperately to get her away from him. "You're alive, thank God you're alive," she screamed, still crying. "Enough with this, Sakura, it was a simple rank genjutsu, for crying out loud. Now we need to work together to grab the bells from Kakashi-sensei," Naruto stated with a stern tone and his eyes ice cold. Both Sakura and Sasuke fell silent and decided to listen to whatever Naruto wanted to say. Later, Kakashi stood leaning against a tree. He knew Naruto alone was good enough to fight him and get the bells, but Naruto had most likely understood the hidden meaning of the test. His eyes turned to see Sasuke coming out from the trees, running head straight towards him as he was waiting. Kakashi pulled the book away and decided to see what he wanted to do. Sasuke grabbed a kunai and threw it at his feet, only for it to explode. Kakashi jumped away in time and knew Naruto must be nearby, only for Sakura to throw a few shurikens that landed far from him. For a moment, Kakashi thought their plan had failed, but he felt heavy, very heavy. He looked up to see a gravity seal around him. Sakura smirked. Wind style, Shuriken Hurricane. Naruto threw a small shuriken enhanced with wind chakra that transformed into multi-shuriken. Kakashi used all his strength to jump away and landed on the ground, far away from the dangerous shurikens. Fire style, Fireball. Wind style, Great Breakthrough. A huge wind made of fire flew towards him with medium Jonin speed. Kakashi smiled behind his mask and the clone burned. The real Kakashi showed up behind Naruto and Sasuke, only for the clock to start ringing. Looks like the time is over. Kakashi started smiling and led them to the 3 tree poles in the middle of the training yard. After they arrived, "It seems you lost," Kakashi said, smiling only for Naruto to pull out the bells from his hand. Both Sasuke and Sakura looked shocked at him while Kakashi thought it was too good to be true. "Aha, when did you take them?" Kakashi asked nervously. "When my chakra chains touched your leg," he answered, smiling brightly. Kakashi understood it since he used the clone after jumping away, but not before the chains attacked him. "Well, to who are you going to give your bells?" Kakashi asked with a firm tone. Naruto looked at them before shrugging his shoulders and throwing the bells at Sakura and Sasuke. "Are you sure, Naruto? This means you have to return to the academy," he stated emotionless. Naruto just nodded his head without thinking twice. Sasuke glanced at the bell in his hand before he looked up at Naruto. "We took the bells because of you. You should have mine," Sasuke suddenly stated and threw his to Naruto, who smiled. Sakura looked conflicted about what to do. Before anyone could do anything else, Kakashi gave them a thumbs up. "I happily announce that you all pass," he said smiling. "But Kakashi-sensei, you said that we would have to have a bell to pass the test and Sasuke doesn't, so why does he pass with us?" asked a confused but hopeful Sakura. "This is to see if you're willing to work together, to see if you can look underneath the underneath. For you see, in the ninja world, those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends and comrades are worse than scum. That's probably the most important lesson I can ever teach you as your sensei, which is why I want you to take it to heart." Kakashi then turned and looked at the memorial stone. "You see this stone next to us? This stone is the memorial stone. It lists all of the shinobis of this village that were killed in the war, and my teammates are on this stone along with my sensei the Yondaime Hokage, as they all died in combat. I come to this place every day, and every time I come here this place it makes me think about the mistakes I've made in the past, and I've made a lot. This is why I'm telling you to help and support one another and your other comrades as you will need them when the time comes and to avoid the mistakes that I have made in the past." Soon Naruto walked to the memorial stone and said a small prayer. Kakashi smiled at him and rubbed his red hair before turning to the two others. Now from tomorrow, we will start our missions as Team 7. Chapter 34, Wave. The forest was singing with the song of birds. Suddenly, a shadow jumped fast from tree to tree, followed by two larger shadows. The small shadow jumped faster and hid behind a bush. The two big shadows looked around, trying to find the damn cat. While all this was happening, a shadow was staring at the cat. His blue eyes looked like ice. "Are you in position, Pinky?" Kakashi asked, bored. "I'm not Pinky, and yes, I'm in position," she shouted, annoyed by the nickname. "I'm in position too, and don't you dare use that nickname," Sasuke suddenly said, not wanting to hear his sensei right now. "Very well. Emo," Kakashi whispered with a chuckle. Sasuke grunted in annoyance but decided to ignore it for now. "Naruto, you there?" Kakashi asked the redhead but was met with silence. Even Sakura and Sasuke found this strange. Kakashi was about to ask again when the young Uzumaki spoke. "Got the cat," he suddenly said. They all exchanged looks before dropping down and seeing the devil. Tora. In Naruto's hands, he was softly caressing her, and she purred at his touch, her eyes closed and enjoying the moment. Kakashi had a raised eyebrow since he didn't remember anyone else ever to be able to have any chance to touch the cat without the risk of losing an eye. But knowing Naruto's bright aura and the way how animals, in general, felt relaxed in his presence, he shouldn't be that much surprised. Sasuke looked surprised but didn't care much about the stupid cat, and he was sure that cat was an evil spawn. Sakura, on the other hand, looked surprised and annoyed. "How can you do that?" she exclaimed, pointing an accusing finger at Naruto, whose eyes suddenly became red. Sakura felt her knees weak by his gaze and shut her mouth. Tora screeched at Sakura. Kakashi sighed, bored of Sakura, who keeps trying to undermine Naruto. He really didn't understand what Hokage-sama was smoking when he decided to put Sakura in Team 7. The young Uzumaki had tried to help the Banshee, but no results. "Sakura, you have to stop chasing Sasuke." She had just turned up to training with Naruto late, once again because of a hunt for Sasuke, who had unsurprisingly eluded her. She had no idea where he kept going. "Why? You want me to date you, do you?" "Sorry, well, it's not going to happen," she said spitefully, thinking of Sasuke. Naruto laughed out loud at her words and slapped his knees. After calming down, he looked up at her. "Why would I care for your attention? I mean, seriously? You keep trying to undermine and talk all the time about how awesome Sasuke is. Why would someone ever in my place want your attention?" Naruto asked with a hint of irritation. Sakura kept quiet and slowly lowered her head in shame and embarrassment. "You can do whatever you want, Sakura, but if you wanted to become a shinobi just to be with Sasuke and no other reason, then you're pathetic," he said with a cold tone that could freeze an ocean. Hokage Tower. Soon they returned to the Hokage to announce that they completed their mission to chase the devil cat. Tora was quickly snatched by a woman who bone-crushed the poor cat. Naruto felt bad for Tora while she desperately tried to return to the hands of Naruto. "Thank you, Hokage-sama," she said, gave the old Hokage money, and left through the big door. Sakura smirked at the torture the poor cat was receiving while Sasuke kept a stoic face and not really showing that he enjoyed her punishment after hours of chasing her all around the village. "We are ready for another mission." Kakashi-sensei started looking at the Hokage. Naruto turned to the Hokage when they heard a scream. Everyone turned to see Tora running away and the woman desperately calling her name. "Or you can just catch Tora again," Sarutobi stated with a smirk but met with denial by the new Genins. "No!" the three Genins shouted at the same time. The old Hokage laughed at their response, fully expecting it by them. "Don't worry, I still remember Tobirama-sensei forcing my team and me to chase after her," he stated, earning a surprised look from everyone in the office. Even Kakashi looked surprised by his raised eyebrow. "Wait? How old is that cat?" Everyone suddenly asked. Even Sasuke couldn't believe that cat to be that old, but remembering her speed and her ways of avoiding them for so many hours. Sarutobi raised his hands. "Well, anyway, that's not really important," he stated with a slight smirk on his face. The old Hokage then grabbed a few letters in front of his desk. "Well, you can help this old man who needs help with his garden, or paint this wall for this new restaurant, or how about a real mission this time, Gigi? Like a C rank?" Naruto interjected the Hokage, tired of doing the chores these people called missions. Sakura was quick to scold Naruto. "Naruto, show respect to Hokage-same." Surprisingly, she didn't try to hit him. Must have scared her back there, he mused. Naruto. Irika spoke with a frown, you can't demand missions like that. Genin teams have to do D-rank missions for 2 to 3 months before they get qualified for C ranks. And even then they're Jonin sensei. Hiruzen cut Irika off with a gentle chuckle, it's okay, Sakura-chan. He has called me that ever since he was little. Sakura's eyes widened a bit in surprise, as did Sasuke's. They didn't know Naruto was so close to the Hokage to the extent of calling the man a grandfather figure. Hiruzen turned towards Kakashi, Kakashi, do you think your team is ready for a C-rank mission? The Jonin put the finger on his chin, acting like he was thinking about it. The Jonin knew Naruto was more than ready and decided to just go on with it. Sure they are Hokage-sama, he stated proudly. Sasuke smiled while Sakura looked insecure about it. Irika took a step forward and was ready to protest when the old Hokage raised his hand to stop him. Very well, you can have this C rank, to protect this bridge builder, Hokage stated before turning his head to a door in the office. Call Tazuna inside. The door revealed a man holding a bottle of alcohol that was already half empty, his cheeks red from drinking. His eyes looked at the young genin in front of him, his eyes filled with disappointment. I asked for actual shinobi, not kids who need someone to look after them, he started, taking another drink from his bottle. Sasuke looked annoyed by his words. That's funny, coming from someone who clearly doesn't understand that age is not important when it comes to being a shinobi, Naruto suddenly said, and a kunai in front of his throat. Tazuna felt a shiver and couldn't dare even move his head to see who was behind him. He felt a cold sweat run down his forehead. Now, Naruto, no need to threaten our customers, Kakashi said, trying to ease the tension in the room. Naruto just smiled before appearing in front of his team. Tazuna touched his neck to see if there was any blood, but surprisingly there wasn't. Turning his eyes to the team, he noticed the boy's red hair. Despite being drunk, he could have sworn he had seen that shade of red before but couldn't quite put a finger where. They will do. I need to go to the wave country, he said, and the genins turned to their sensei. The front gate. 1 hour he stated before disappearing, followed by the redhead. Naruto. He reached his compound and started gathering everything he might need in the mission. He knew Shizen-chan and Tsunadeba-chan were most likely working in the hospital, so he decided to leave a letter for them. Grabbing soldier pills and sleep pills, he sealed them in a scroll and grabbed kunai, shurikens. Last he grabbed food and sealed it in his scrolls. His sword tightened to his back. Naruto's thoughts went to the mission, and he knew Uzumaki was close to the wave. He wondered if he could sneak in during the mission or maybe ask Kakashi-sensei for permission to visit his homeland. Deciding to think about it when they reach wave, he wore his sandals and shunshin to the gate. Sasuke. He grabbed his bag and started putting food, bottles with water, a few soldier pills, and started putting his weapons. He glanced at the scroll on the table and decided to leave it there and start training again after he returned. Finally closing the bag, he left through the door and turned to look at his home. He put his hands together and said a small prayer before locking his house and going to the front gate. Sakura. She put a hairspray on her bag, looked at the food on the table, and decided to grab a few cans that had low-fat food. She grabbed 3 cans and did the math in her head, that was more than enough. She wouldn't need more than that. Sakura put another hairspray, her items needed for her hair to look pretty, and decided to go to the main gate. The main gate. Kakashi waited for his team to arrive. Tazuna was staying close to him, looking impatient. But Kakashi could see more to this situation but decided to ignore it. For now, the man was probably just nervous. Jonin knew his team was ready for a C rank, especially Naruto and probably Sasuke. His team had its ups and downs since they first started doing missions. Kakashi had first started by teaching them teamwork. Surprisingly, Sasuke had somehow agreed to follow Naruto's lead and work together. Sakura didn't do much, which concerned Kakashi. He encouraged her to train, but she did the bare minimum in that department. He sighed and thought of ways to do something better. Perhaps making them complete D missions without his help could be beneficial. He decided to consider it after returning. Sasuke had made progress in teamwork but still couldn't stop thinking about killing Itachi. Kakashi understood his motivations, but he knew that revenge would destroy everything and gain nothing in return. The satisfaction of killing him wasn't worth it. Kakashi thought and turned to see Naruto appearing in front of him. Tazuna couldn't understand how they could do that but decided not to ask since he would most likely understand nothing and just receive a headache in the end. I'm ready, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto started putting his hands behind his head. Kakashi noticed his lack of a bag but knew Naruto preferred scrolls instead of S-bag. Soon Sasuke and Sakura arrived. Sakura put her hands on her knees, breathing heavily. Sasuke looked bored. She looked up to see Naruto without a backpack. "Naruto, where's your bag?" she asked, pointing the finger at him. "I sealed my things in scrolls, much easier to travel," he stated, earning an approval nod from Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei. "If that's the case, seal my bag as well," she said and was about to hand him her bag. "No, if you want to do that, then learn how to seal it yourself," he stated and walked away from her. "Well, let's go," Kakashi said with a cheerful tone, trying to make the mission look more fun. They soon started walking outside the village, and soon the village didn't look behind them anymore. Naruto liked and decided just to keep silent since he enjoyed it more. After almost 4 hours of talking of nothing but silence, Sakura seemed to sense the awkwardness, and she did not have the same problem as Naruto of finding a topic to talk about. Tazuna-san, you are from Wave Country, right?" Tazuna turned his head towards her. "Yeah, what about it? Do you have a ninja village in that country?" Surprisingly, Kakashi answered, "Actually, the Wave does not have a ninja village. Each of the elemental nations has its hidden shinobi villages. But the smaller countries don't have the resources to fund, let alone maintain their hidden village. Budget, people, missions, there are so many resources to account for that the smaller nations can't afford. So they prefer to hire ninjas from other countries." Tazuna nodded his head in agreement, knowing their poor state. "What about Kirigakure? That village is close to Wave?" Sakura asked, thinking why Tazuna had not asked for help from them. Naruto turned his head to look at her with a glare. "Is because of a civil war, Sakura. One day Mizukage suddenly decided to exterminate all people with bloodlines in the country, starting a civil war in the process," Naruto replied before Tazuna could. Sakura looked horrified that the Kage that is supposed to protect the village was harming it. The girl kept quiet, not wanting to talk about it more. While walking, both Kakashi and Naruto noticed a puddle in the road. Naruto felt 2 chakras coming from the puddle. He grunted in annoyance but at the same time wondered why they were there. This was a C-rank mission, and he knew none of them had any big bounty on his head, except maybe Kakashi, but the chakra in the puddle was medium Chunin chakra level at best. Deciding to wait, it didn't take long and from the puddle came out 2 masked shinobi that carried a bladed chain that tightened around Kakashi before cutting him to shreds. Sakura screamed. "One down." Naruto put his hand on the pommel of his sword. "Sakura, protect Tazuna," he yelled before rushing at the 2 ninjas. Before any of them could do anything, the redhead threw a kunai in the chains that blocked them in the ground. With a quick slash, he cut the arm of one of the attackers who screamed in pain, trying to hold the wound with his other hand as blood flew everywhere like rain. "Brother," the other one screamed but became silent when he just fell to the ground after Naruto hit him at the back of his head. He turned around to see Sasuke in front of Tazuna with a kunai in his hand, while Sakura stood in the same place shaking like a leaf, her eyes looking at the guy's arm in the ground. The redhead narrowed his eyes before turning to look at Kakashi-sensei, who came out from behind a tree. "Well done, Naruto and Sasuke, it is important always to protect the client," he said, glancing at Sakura before giving Tazuna a furious look. He marched in front of him and grabbed him by the throat. "I thought this was a C-rank mission, protecting you from bandits but not hired shinobi," he accused and pointed the finger at the Chunin-level shinobi that attacked them. Tazuna tried to free himself from his grip. "I don't know why they attacked," he tried to say. Naruto sighed, bored. "Tazuna, I can feel when someone's lying. We are giving you one more chance, or we leave you in the road," he stated with a cold tone. Tazuna felt the ki and nodded his head. Kakashi dropped him to the ground. "Have you heard of a man called Gato?" "I've heard of him," Naruto stated. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, silently asking to elaborate. "He is the owner of a shipping company. When I last read about him, he was among the top 15 richest of the nations. Suspected for criminal activity, but no proof," he said with his arms crossed. "The very same," Tazuna agreed. "Though now he is among the top 5. He came to Wave Country a bit more than 2 years ago. First, we didn't think anything about it, but soon he had bought up all the shipping industry of our nation. You see, Wave Country is an island, so we are dependent on shipping to get goods. But that wasn't the worst part. He used his monopoly to drain the country dry. The people live in poverty. Many lost their houses to Gato. Whoever protested was killed. He takes what he wants with his hired thugs, making sure nobody dares to oppose him. His shipping business covers his criminal activities. He deals with drugs, alcoholics, rare goods, even slaves. Everything and anything that brings him money. The only thing he fears is the bridge I'm building. If I finish my bridge, his monopoly will be rendered obsolete, and our country will be back in business because we will be connected to the mainland. So why didn't you just tell the truth to Hokage-sama? Kakashi glared at him. Hokage-sama would understand. In that case, after the mission was completed, you would pay a little every month until is fully paid or offer a deal amongst Wave and Konoha, Naruto suggested. Tazuna lowered his gaze, and he hadn't thought of it. Kakashi turned to look at his students. This mission is now B rank, maybe even A rank. According to the rules we should return to the village, he stated, giving each of his students a glance to see what they thought of it. We can do this, Kakashi-sensei. I never turned back and left people to suffer because of a maniac, Naruto stated with a smile on his face. Kakashi smiled back, already knowing what his little brother would say. He turned to look at Sasuke, who shrugged his shoulders. I say we continue. We have you if anything is harder than we thought, he said, putting his hands on his pockets. That left only Sakura, who still looked terrified. I say we continue, she said, still not sure if that was the best choice. Kakashi nodded in agreement. The demon brothers have a bounty on their head, Naruto, he stated, and Naruto nodded in understanding. He walked up to them and stabbed them in the head. Sakura closed her eyes, and tears slowly rolled down her cheek. After killing them, Naruto sealed their bodies in 2 different scrolls and turned to his team. Let's go. After walking for days, they soon reached a coast. Since the demon brothers hadn't had any problems, that surprised both Naruto and Kakashi, who was sure someone else would attack them by now. They soon started making their way to Wave. Tanzo greeted the fisherman. The guy greeted Tanzo with a friendly smile but kept a wary eye at the shinobi team. After traveling for 2 hours, they soon reached the shore. Naruto saw the bridge while making their way here. He had to admit that he was impressed by the size of the bridge. Good luck, Tazuna, the fisherman said and soon left. Kakashi turned to look at Tazuna. How long before we reach your house? He asked, trying to see if there was anything to worry about. Almost there, we will reach it within 3 hours, he stated, and soon they started walking towards Tazuna's house. During all this, the team was quiet, but Naruto couldn't shake off a strange feeling in his stomach. It felt like someone was calling him. He couldn't understand it and spread his senses as far as possible but couldn't detect a living human anywhere nearby. The closer they got, the stronger the feeling. Unknown to Naruto, the seal on his stomach started glowing red and slowly growing. Kurama noticed it and used his chakra to stop the seal from whatever it was trying to do. The fox didn't know why it was reacting like that, but he didn't want to give it any chances. Naruto breathed in relief, and soon they were halfway to Tazuna's house. Suddenly he felt a chakra behind a tree. Without thinking twice, he threw a kunai enhanced with wind chakra. Everyone suddenly was on their guards. Naruto saw a white rabbit slowly walking away. He narrowed his eyes. See, Naruto, you almost hurt an innocent bunny, Sakura shouted, but the redhead was in no mood to hear her. Down both Kakashi and Naruto screamed. The redhead grabbed Sakura and Tazuna and threw them to the ground. A large sword suddenly flew and hit the tree near them. A man stood at the sword's handle, who had bandages covering his face from his nose to his throat. He wore bandages around his arms. His eyes are cold like ice. Naruto stood up, feeling the hidden person behind their new guest. To Naruto's surprise, he couldn't feel malicious thoughts coming from the hidden person but only from the first guest, and even from him weren't at the same level he usually gets from some of the stupid villagers. Kakashi walked in front of the team. Kakashi Hatake, what an honor to be against you, the man stated with a smirk behind his mask. Zabuza Momoichi Kakashi slowly moved his hand to his forehead protector that covered his left eye. Naruto noticed it and smiled. What do you want? Kakashi asked warily, his eye not leaving Zabuza. The missing nin chuckled darkly before pointing the finger at Tazuna. I'm here for the bridge builder, give him to me, and none of your small children will have to die, he stated and releasing a tiny bit of his ki, making both Sasuke and Sakura shake, while Naruto just brushed it off since Kurama could produce 10 times more ki on his sleep. He walked and stood beside Kakashi. I'm sorry to break it to you, but it is our mission to help Tazuna, so can you peacefully leave us, Mummy, Naruto stated, holding the pommel of his katana. Zabuza narrowed his eyes in annoyance but was impressed that the kid didn't look affected by his ki. I'm afraid that won't happen anytime soon, kid, he started, jumping in the water nearby. Kakashi moved his forehead protector upwards and revealed his fully matured Sharingan. The Sharingan so early, I'm honored. I have read about you during my time as an ANBU, everyone calls you Kakashi of the Sharingan, he said coldly before doing hand signs. Sasuke immediately grew interested and wondered why his sensei would have the Sharingan. He knew Kakashi wasn't of his clan, or maybe someone gave it to him. Or did he steal it? Naruto, stand close to Sasuke and Sakura and protect them, Kakashi ordered. Naruto nodded in agreement and stood in front of Tazuna. His katana on his hand is covered in wind chakra. Hidden mist technique. Chapter 35, Pain. Naruto. He could see the fear in Sakura and Sasuke's eyes, and they looked terrified of Zabuza. The redhead couldn't blame them. He was sure he would have been in the same situation if he hadn't trained. Naruto saw the mist slowly spreading. Usually, this would be terrible news for them. Zabuza was an expert of silent kill, and killing in the fog was something he had done his whole life. The jutsu itself was impressive, being able to change the battleground to his advantage. That was one of the most important things in battle. A shinobi needs every advantage in his side. Before the mist could get foggier, Naruto did hand signs. Wind style, great breakthrough. Naruto shouted and left out a vast and strong wind that moved the whole mist away, making the battleground in their favor again. Zabuza was slowly revealed standing in a tree close to their location, his eyes narrowed and glaring at the redhead for ruining his jutsu. He clenched his teeth, glaring at the kid. Before he could do anything, Kakashi showed up in front of him with a kunai in his hand. Zabuza blocked his attack with Kubikarabocho, his eyes glaring at the Jonin before jumping away and in the ground. Zabuza knew not having the favor of the mist was terrible enough, and Kakashi wasn't a known Jonin around the world for nothing. He gripped the handle of the sword with all his strength before rushing towards the Jonin. Kakashi blocked his swing with his kunai. The strength was enough to make him take a step away. Zabuza moved his hands away before swinging again with more strength, and this time, his sword cut through the kunai and sliced through his chest only for him to pop. Zabuza moved in time to avoid an attack from behind. He turned to see Kakashi again. Zabuza swung his sword, trying to cut down the Jonin, but his Sharingan kept helping him. They kept fighting and fighting, blow after blow, only using taijutsu and kenjutsu. Zabuza took 3 steps back before rushing at Kakashi and, with all his strength, pierced through the kunai only for Kakashi to turn into water. Zabuza's eyes widened when he felt a grip on his neck, and 2 kunai pierced the skin of his neck, only for water to come out of his neck, and the whole body turned into water. Kakashi saw a hidden Zabuza suddenly behind his team, ready to slice Tazuna in half. Zabuza raised his sword high, ready to kill the bridge builder. He swung down, but his sword was stopped only a few centimeters away from the shoulder of the bridge builder. He clenched his teeth tightly that draw blood from his lip. He glared, seeing a katana blocking his swing. His eyes slowly the redhead with katana on his hand, and his blue eyes looked like the ice of Haku. Zabuza tried to use more strength in his arms but was surprised to see the Genin was holding his ground. Take Tazuna away, Naruto yelled before he channels wind chakra on his katana. His sword slowly started cutting through the thick metal of his giant blade, much to the surprise of the mummy. He jumped away from Naruto and started doing hand signs, immediately followed by Naruto. They finished looking at each other. Water style, dragon water. Water style, twin dragon. The water slowly grew and shaped like dragons. The water raised high above the water. Naruto's jutsu collided with his and overpowered him, and the second water dragon hit him head-on. Zabuza was thrown against a tree. With too much strength, that almost ripped the tree from the ground. He regained his composure and stood above water, seeing Naruto slowly walking towards him. "You're good for a Genin kid," Zabuza commented, raising his sword and pointing it towards Naruto, who had his sword in his right hand. "It's an honor to receive such compliment from one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist," Naruto stated, his voice firm. Zabuza had to give the kid credit for his tone. He sounded like a real shinobi instead of a green kid who faints from the first drop of blood. Zabuza looked at his sword again and recognized the pommel and the blade. The phoenix symbol is at the tip of the sword. His eyes looked at his long red hair. "Hey, where did you get that sword?" Zabuza asked with a hint of dread in his tone, remembering the Red Death of Konoha exceptionally well. "The sword belonged to my mother," Naruto replied. Held the sword with pride. Zabuza's eyes widened, doing a double check. He knew he should have recognized the red hair of the Uzumaki, and his face was similar to hers. He knew Uzumaki wasn't known just for their seals but for their talent in kenjutsu as well. Hell, Kushina alone was strong enough to battle the 7 swordsmen of the mist and come out on top. "If that's the case, then let's settle this like swordsmen," he stated before raising his sword again. His breathing had slowly grown. Kakashi was standing close to them and was about to intervene when Naruto nodded and pointed his sword at Zabuza. Without a second hesitation, both rushed towards each other and clashed their swords, Naruto's sword still channeling with wind chakra. Zabuza backed away and started rolling his sword around, forcing Naruto to keep his distance from the blade. He kept moving his blade around, making sure not to leave the reed any opening. Naruto faked tripping, and Zabuza noticed it and suddenly stopped and slammed his sword where Naruto was. Still, Naruto moved to his right in time and was about to slice his head when Zabuza used the extended pommel of his sword to block his attack before jumping away. Naruto narrowed his eyes and channeled more chakra in his sword and jumped high in the air. Zabuza kept his focus on him and wondered what he wanted to do. Wind slash, he yelled, and a huge wind-shaped blade flew towards him. The wind blade flew at Zabuza with such frightening speed that Zabuza just managed to avoid the deadly technique, although it did manage to cut his leg slightly as a cut appeared on his leg and the side around his bone started to bleed slightly. But what was most shocking to Zabuza was that the blade of wind continued past him and had cleanly cut right through two trees that were behind him. Zabuza landed on the ground, thinking, how can a genin be this good? Either Konoha had started training their genins to the ground to become the strongest, or this one was just this good. Zabuza didn't have time to catch his breath when Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him. His body looked engulfed in chakra, and his speed had increased. Zabuza barely raised his blade in time to block the first attack, but suddenly another Naruto showed up behind him and punched him in the chest. Zabuza immediately felt a sharp pain on his chest and knew the kid had broken his ribs. Zabuza flew fast and hit a tree with such strength that it almost went through it, his body feeling weak. Zabuza felt the pain in his chest and knew he was in trouble. He looked up and saw the kid in front of him ready to deliver the final blow when suddenly two Senbon needles pierced his neck, and Zabuza fell to the ground. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the newcomer, knowing full well he had been hiding from the very beginning. Thank you for capturing him for me. The person had long black hair along with a slender frame. The outfit was kirigakure pinstriped, which stopped at his knees. There was a brown sash around the waist with a tail wrapped around twice. But the most identifying thing about the person was the mask they wore. It was white with thin, curved eye holes and a red wavy design in place of the mouth and the kirigakure symbol etched in the top. The person was a hunter nin. The person wanted to move towards the body when Naruto moved forward and put his fingers on his neck, acting as if he was checking a pulse. Without his knowledge, Naruto put an empty seal on his neck. After a few seconds, Naruto backed away and turned to look at the hunter nin. He's dead, he said before walking away. The Anbu grabbed Zabuza and disappeared, leaving Naruto and Kakashi. The Jonin found the whole thing suspicious but decided to ignore it for now. Let's go to Tazuna's house. Kakashi started walking. Naruto decided to follow him. Soon they reached the others. They told them that Zabuza was dead, and Kakashi told Tazuna to lead them to his house. Soon they reached a place. Tsunami, open the door, Tazuna said, knocking on the front door. The door opened to reveal a young woman who looked relieved and happy. Father is good to see you, she said, smiling and hugging him. The old man hugged her back before turning his head to the team behind him. These people are with me, make sure to prepare rooms for them. Tazuna said gratefully that the team had accepted to help him. Tazuna immediately bowed her head. Thank you for helping my father, she said, grateful and opening the door wider. Not a problem, miss, Kakashi replied and walked inside, followed by his genins. This is a beautiful house you have here, Sakura said, looking inside. Thank you, Tsunami said and walked upstairs to fix the rooms for their new guests. Naruto saw a little kid glaring at them, sitting at the beginning of the stairs. Naruto could feel the hatred inside the kid, but that wasn't directed towards them. Well, not all the hate. Naruto felt terrible for the kid and hoped to help the place regain their wealth and get rid of Gato. Kakashi sits in a chair, his head resting on the back of the chair, his eye closed. Sakura sits close to the table, and her eyes roam around the house while Sasuke is checking something on his backpack. Naruto noticed the picture of a man on the wall, and he didn't question who he was since it could be something personal. After a while, Tsunami walked downstairs. The rooms are ready, she informed them. Kakashi and Sakura stood up, ready to head upstairs to rest from a long road. Mother, why are these people here? They are going to die, the kid said, looking up at his mother. Naruto stopped walking and turned to glare at him. I'm sorry to break it to you, but I won't die anytime soon. Naruto started smiling. The kid's glare grew, his teeth clenched. Don't be stupid, you all will die from Gato, he yelled and ran upstairs to his room probably. Inari waits, his mother said, trying to get him back, but a door was heard shutting from upstairs. Tsunami turned towards them with an apologetic look on her face. Her hands clenched together in front of her chest. "Please forgive my son," she pleaded, looking at Kakashi, who just shrugged his shoulders. "No worries, miss, I understand his situation," he said and walked upstairs, followed by the others. Tomorrow. They woke up when the sunrise. Naruto knew Zabuza was still alive, but he was curious if they could be his allies. The man or woman? Naruto wasn't sure if the missing nin was a male or female, but that didn't matter now. Naruto could feel the chakra of the missing nin, but he could feel it. And it was cold. Kurama had told him that his sensing ability could even feel what chakra affinity someone had, but the chakra of the missing nin felt cold. He wondered if he perhaps had a bloodline. He decided to check it himself the next time they faced Zabuza. Naruto stood up and stretched his legs and arms. He walked downstairs and saw Tsunami working in the kitchen. "Good morning, Tsunami-san," he greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Naruto-san." Naruto walked outside and thought of the situation. He wondered if he could visit Uzumaki anytime soon. Naruto started his morning exercise and waited until the other woke up. Kakashi-sensei was the second to wake up, followed by Sasuke and Sakura. They were eating breakfast. Kakashi looked deep in thought while Sasuke looked rather impatient about something. "I hate to break it to you all, but I fear Zabuza might still be alive," Kakashi suddenly announced, surprising everyone except Naruto, who already knew it. "What do you mean, sensei? You said Naruto defeated him?" Sakura exclaimed, looking at Kakashi. "I thought he might be dead. I was there, and the weapons the missing nin used were unusual." "He used sunbon needles that are not a weapon used by a missing nin," Kakashi replied and pointed two fingers at where the needles had pierced Zabuza's neck. "The missing nin didn't want to kill Zabuza. I'm sure he was there to help in case if things got tough for Zabuza to handle," Naruto added. "And the place he hit Zabuza is a place that can cause a near-death state. Your pulse is very low, almost can't be felt." Naruto finished pointing two fingers at the side of his neck. Sakura looked horrified that Zabuza was still alive while Sasuke had a slight smirk on his face. Tazuna gulped and slightly paled. The man was a demon and found it better to think that he wasn't a problem anymore. "Don't worry about it, Sakura. Right now, we will start training, except you, Naruto. You will guard Tazuna," Kakashi stated and pointed at Naruto. He nodded in agreement, finding no problem with that. Sasuke looked eager to start training and couldn't wait. Soon Kakashi took Sasuke and Sakura to train. Naruto decided to help Tazuna. They reached the bridge. Tazuna, along with other men, started working on the bridge. "Tazuna, can I help you?" Naruto suddenly asked, since he could at least help them. "Of course, kid, the more, the merrier," Tazuna replied, smiling. Naruto nodded before making hundreds of clones to help build the bridge. Tazuna forgot his mouth open for a few minutes before coming to his senses and murmuring something about Shinobi's weird abilities. The original Naruto left and decided to look around Wave Country. Naruto was on his way back to the house when he heard a call for help coming from a nearby town. He got to the town as quickly as he could to see 5 bandits gripping none other than Tsunami. All of the bandits wore blue battle gear with swords attached to their backs. "Shut up, bitch, you don't pay your taxes to Gato, then you'll have to pay us," said the bandit holding down Tsunami. "Hey, the lady doesn't like that," said Naruto, who was on top of a building. "Who do you think you are, brat?" said the bandit next to the one that was holding down Tsunami. Naruto vanished in a blur and was in front of the bandit that just spoke and sliced his throat. The bandit fell to the ground holding the neck with his hands, trying to stop the bleeding. He then turned quickly and slashed the one that was holding Tsunami's throat. He fell to the ground, gurgling up blood. "Thank you, Naruto-san," said Tsunami. "Don't thank me yet," said Naruto as he turned to the rest of the bandits who pulled out their swords. The first bandit ran at Naruto and attempted a downward slash. However, Naruto dodged to the left and stabbed the bandit in his stomach. He then flipped over him and took out a shuriken from his pocket. He threw the shuriken at the second bandit and hit him right between the ribs and the heart. Naruto landed and turned around to see the third bandit holding Tsunami with his sword to her neck. "Make one move, and I'll slice her neck," said the bandit, who was shaking a little. Before he could react, the bandit was stabbed in the forehead by the kunai, previously in Naruto's hand. He fell to the ground, dead. "Thank you so much, Naruto-san," said Tsunami, who ran up and hugged Naruto. "It's no problem," said Naruto, blushing a bit. "I'll escort you home," said Naruto as he and Tsunami walked home. While walking home, "Tsunami-san, do you think anyone around would get me to Uzumaki? Naruto asked, wondering if any boat would go in that place. Tsunami gasped at his question and shook her head. "That place is forbidden to go, Naruto-san. Many people had gone and never returned," she said, concerned. Naruto sighed, and knowing he would need to go walking on water until he reached Uzushiogakure hidden place. Zabuza was lying on a bed as Haku was checking his bandages. 3 of his ribs had been broken, thankfully no internal bleeding, but still it hurt like a bitch. Zabuza still couldn't understand how a genin had been able to best him, in Kenjutsu no less, but one thing Haku told him stuck in his mind. Zabuza-sama, I don't know if this was just a mistake on his part or not, but I can definitely say he hit you in a way to make sure you wouldn't die. Zabuza wondered what exactly that meant. Did the kid not take him seriously, or was there something else? He didn't know and decided to ignore it for now. You're healing, Zabuza-sama, take it a week, and I'm sure you will be able to fight again, Haku said, smiling behind her mask. Zabuza grunted, seeing the mask. Remove the mask, Haku, he said with an emotionless tone. Haku removed the mask, showing her face. Zabuza liked it more to see her face rather than hiding her face behind a stupid mask. Are you going to fight them again? Haku asked, avoiding her master's eyes. She didn't want to admit it, but she didn't want her master to fight the team from the leaf again. Zabuza turned to look at her. She flinched slightly, afraid that she might have upset him. I have to, Haku, but don't worry next time. I won't underestimate the brat, Zabuza stated, looking at his wounds. Haku said nothing but just nodded her head, and she was about to ask for permission to go outside and check for herbs when she remembered something. Zabuza-sama, if you don't mind me asking, what is the Uzumaki Clan? I have never heard of it, she said, looking downwards and avoiding her master's eyes. Zabuza was slightly surprised by the question. Uzumaki Clan was a clan that lived in Uzushiogakure. Despite their insane abilities in Kenjutsu and Fuinjutsu, they were known for being peaceful people. I can't remember in any book that said that they ever started any conflict, but maybe that was what killed them in the end, Zabuza-sama said, and went and explained the slaughter Iwa, Kyumo and Kiri did to Uzushiogakure in 3rd Shinobi War. Haku couldn't help but feel pity for the boy that apparently was an Uzumaki, and she knew how it was to be the last one of a clan. You said something about the Red Death of Konoha. Who was she? Haku asked, interested. Instead of annoyance or maybe anger, Haku saw respect in Zabuza's eyes. She was one hell of a swordsman. She alone would be able to defeat the likes of Kisame Hashigaki, Zabuza said with respect on his tone. She had the chance to kill me once, but she spared me instead. She told me, you're still young, fight me again when you get stronger, Zabuza said. Haku smiled and decided to leave and find herbs for Zabuza-sama to heal him. Later. It was now sunset, and Sasuke had finally made it to the top of the tree. It had taken him the past 5 hours to get up there. He sighed in triumph. He had used up pretty much all of his chakras. He gulped a bit as a huge realization hit him. How was he to get down? No chakra meant no sticking to the side of the tree. Not sticking to the side of the tree meant he would have to climb down the usual way. Fortunately for him, the tree had very few branches to interrupt his fall to the ground. Sakura was at the base of the tree, cheering him on and getting on his nerves. He slowly began his descent to where a rabid pink-haired banshee awaited. Naruto had found/made a nice hole a while back to hide most of the debris he had made and was already back at the house helping Tsunami cook. Naruto left no proof behind that he had been training in the spot by the river, unless that is, you count the huge gaping holes filled with branches and mud. Yep, no one would ever know he was there. When Sasuke and Sakura had gotten back, the dinner was already on the table. Everyone had just sat down to eat when the two got in. I hope you all like it. It isn't much, but at least we won't go hungry, Tsunami said as she sat down at the table. Tazuna seemed to smile at the food in front of him. Naruto helped me out, and we only used half the food I thought we'd need. Naruto scratched his head upon having his name mentioned but smiled nonetheless. They all sat down to eat but Inari. It's all pointless. You can never win, only be stopped. And if you do, it's only temporary, Inari said, looking downward. You'll just end up dead like all the others. And I'm telling you, I won't go down that easily, Naruto said with a smile, trying to reassure the kid that everything would be alright. But instead, Inari slammed his hands on the table. No, you don't understand. People like you are that make me sick. You have been raised in a peaceful village your whole life. You don't know what it's like to know pain, he shouted, but then saw a shadow on Naruto's face. He swore to see a fox glaring at him. Naruto's eyes turned red. Just what do you know, you bastard, Naruto/Kurama screamed and grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Everyone froze from the amount of ki leaking from Naruto. You think you know pain, but you know nothing. I lived my whole life hated by the village for something I couldn't control, my parents dead since I was a baby. People would gather on my birthday to hunt me down. Me, a 4-year-old kid. They would insult and kick me out of shops wanting me to starve. They tried to kill me, and 2 times they almost did it. So do not tell me about pain, Naruto yelled and threw him to the ground. Naruto wait Kakashi tried to call him back, but Naruto just slammed the door shut and left outside. While all this happened, everyone else had been silent. Kakashi-sensei was. Was it true? Sakura asked, not wanting to know the answer. I'm afraid that's a watered-down version, Kakashi stated sadly. While all this was happening, a figure stood in the forest looking at the young Uzumaki leaving the house. His face was white like milk, and his eyes were purple. He had long white hair and a long white robe. Go in Yuzushio young Uzumaki, the figure whispered and disappeared from the view. Naruto turned his head around when he heard the strange voice. He looked around but couldn't see anyone, and neither could he sense anyone. Who was that? Chapter 36, Visions of Home. Naruto. When Naruto awoke the following day, he was greeted with a sight he hadn't expected to see. A beautiful female ninja was strolling across the field toward him. He knew she was a ninja from the fact that she was making almost no sound as she walked. Ninja had a habit of doing that wherever they went, civilians, not so much. And her having high Chunin chakra level. Tensing when she saw him open his eyes, she flicked a senbon into her hand. I know you're a shinobi, Naruto said, but I don't want to fight you. How can I trust you? Her sweet voice drifted over to him. From the looks of it, you could have killed me from a distance with that senbon while I slept. You didn't, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Now that I'm awake, however, you'd be hard-pressed actually to kill me anyway. What's your name? Because I'm Uzumaki Naruto. He had a sheepish grin on his face and yawned, his hand rubbing the back of his head. Naruto didn't need to mention that he could have killed her if she did try to harm him. Haku was unsure of what to do. She could have killed him while he slept, but that just hadn't felt right. He had looked so peaceful from where she was standing. He didn't seem threatening now that he was awake, so she guessed she could go along with it, as long as she got these supplies back to Zabuza. I'm Haku. So, what are you out here gathering herbs for, Haku? Naruto inquired innocently, trying to lighten the mood. They are for someone very close to me. They were injured, and these are going to help them get better. Well, do you want a hand gathering them? I could make your job a lot easier. Several clones appeared before Haku could object and began searching through the woods and clearing for the herbs that Haku needed. Now sit down, my godmother taught me medically, Naruto said with a smile. But I... No buts, come on and sit down, my clones will still get the herbs you need, don't worry. Okay, she said, sitting down opposite from him, still wary of what he was doing. For a while, they explained pleasantries, with Naruto explaining that he was here because of a mission, then out of nowhere, he asked a rather unexpected question. So, Haku, is Zabuza recovering well enough? She flinched, not knowing how the boy who was only just younger than she was had figured it out. Calm down, as I said, I don't want to fight. Naruto tried to defuse the situation before she could take any action against him. I could tell you were a ninja from the way you walked. You said you needed to help someone close to you, you use senbon, and you have the same build as a hunter nin that carried away one supposedly dead Zabuza. Your facial twitch just then confirmed my suspicions. Don't worry, as I said, I don't want to cause you any harm. We both have our missions, it just so happens that they oppose each other. I'll hold no grudge against you for it, but I do hope we can get through this with as little bloodshed as possible. All Haku could do was nod in response. She didn't know what it was about this kid she liked, but she knew that he wasn't going to hurt her while she sat there with him. He was too sincere. As Naruto's clones walked back over each with a pile of herbs, he got up. Well, here are your herbs, Haku. I have to get back to my team. I just want you to know that even if I don't want bloodshed, I'll still protect my team with everything that I have. So is that where you get your strength from? From willing to do anything to protect those close to you? Yes, and tell Zabuza that I want to talk to him, to end this without bloodshed and giving him another chance at giving a crack at killing the Mizukage, he replied with a different tone. Gone was the smiling and the goofy tone. Now, he talked seriously and firmly. Before she could say anything to him, he disappeared, leaving her alone in her thoughts. I have my people to protect Naruto. I guess next time we meet, we'll see whose desire to protect is stronger. Zabuza was resting on a cot with a blanket over him. He did not like the fact that he had lost to the Uzumaki brat. He didn't want to think that the kid had left him alive just because he didn't see him as a threat, mocking him. But at the same time, the little brat reminded him of the Red Death. His gaze was just like hers despite having cold blue eyes. A gaze of a person ready to kill but at the same time filled with honor and compassion. Moments later, a short man dressed in a business suit and two samurais as bodyguards entered the room and went over to Zabuza. So the terrifying demon of the mist is crippled after facing a few kids and a ninja. I don't think I'm getting my money's worth when it comes to paying you, Zabuza. Perhaps I should just kill you and spare myself the pain of losing any more money, the short man sneered at the bed resting in. Gato walked over to Zabuza and reached out to strangle him when a figure appeared out of nowhere and grabbed his wrist before ruthlessly twisting it. You will not harm Zabuza-sama. I won't allow it, came the stern voice of Haku. He twisted Gato's wrist further to just before the point of breaking it to drive his point home. Gato shrieked in pain and fell to his knees. Hands off our boss. One of the samurai took a step forward when Haku grabbed a kunai and threw it at them. The samurai dodged it as it got buried in the wall behind them. Seeing them distracted, she pulled out two of her senbon and threw it precisely at a point in both of their arms that it was rendered immobile. The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees as Haku whispered with deadly intent, I missed your vital points on purpose, so don't test me. Gato snarled as he got up to his feet after Haku released him, insolent brat. You and Zabuza had better finish the job I gave you, or there will be consequences. With that, he exited the house, followed by his bodyguards, whose arms were still immobile. You know, you didn't have to do that for me. I could have taken care of it myself if it came to that, Zabuza commented as he fingered the kunai in his hands under the bedsheet. I was aware of that, Zabuza-sama. But as your tool, I will always protect my master in any circumstance, Haku said with a smile. Zabuza sighed sadly at her words. In any case, I will be back to full strength in 3 more days. And when I am, his voice turned murderous, the Uzumaki brat will die. Zabuza noticed the flash of worry and no approval in her eyes. It was only for a sec, but Zabuza saw it anyway. Haku. You have anything against it, he said with a stern tone staring at her. She flinched and took a step back instinctively, her right hand holding her left's hand wrist. I met Naruto Uzumaki this morning. He told me he could help us to have another crack at killing the Mizukage, she said, looking directly at Zabuza. Zabuza narrowed his eyes slightly. Usually, Haku wasn't trusting to strangers, let alone to people who were their enemies right now. However, Haku always avoided killing as much as possible. She never was a very trusting person. The demon of mist had to give the kid credit for his talent in the sword, and if he was anything like his mother, then his Fuinjutsu wasn't far behind in talent. He put his hand on his chin and thought of it. Zabuza didn't know how the kid could know of his attempted attack on the Mizukage. He still hated that he failed to kill the Mizukage who destroyed the lives of all the people with bloodlines. His eyes focused on Haku, remembering when he found her alone, with no one else around to protect her. He felt anger in his chest when he remembered what the Mizukage had done, taking a deep breath. Zabuza focused on Haku again. I'm still the demon of the mist, and I can't just cancel a contract I made despite him being a bitch. Let's see how things turn out in the bridge, Zabuza stated, focusing on Haku's reaction. She lowered her gaze for a second before focusing on Zabuza again. She opened her mouth but closed it again before her eyes found courage. I understand, Zabuza-sama, she replied with an emotionless voice. Her face turned and looked just as emotionless as the mask lying on the table nearby. This time it was Zabuza who lowered his eyes for a split second before turning his eyes too hard like stone. Good, we need to be ready for them. Naruto. The young Uzumaki soon reached Tazuna's home. The sun had raised high in the sky, the light shining the ground around him. Naruto still thought of the kid who had the gall to preach to him about pain and suffering. Despite knowing he was only a kid, he should be smart enough to understand that there are people that have suffered and feel pain more than him. Sasuke was an example of suffering and losing everything you have. Even Kakashi-sensei had lost so much but still kept a smile on his face despite the pain and the nightmares. Naruto was about to open the door to walk inside the house when Kakashi-sensei opened, followed closely by Sasuke and tired-looking Sakura. Kakashi saw the redhead in front of him. He felt relieved to see him unharmed, but he needed to understand that he was reckless. Naruto, where were you? Kakashi asked with a stern voice, crossing his arms in front of his chest. Although he felt happy to see his little brother, Naruto needed to understand what he did could have resulted in his death. All needed was someone good at stealth and a kunai. Naruto noticed the tone of Kakashi-sensei. He took a step back. I trained outside before I fell asleep from exhausting, the redhead stated with a serious tone. Kakashi looked at him and pointed the finger at him. I don't want you to do something like that again. Someone could have found you and kill you, Kakashi stated with a higher tone that sent shivers of fear into Sakura's body despite not being the one who made a mistake. I understand, Kakashi-sensei. I'm sorry, Naruto replied, slightly ashamed to disappoint his sensei. Kakashi walked close and put his hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, just make sure it doesn't happen again, Kakashi stated with a more friendly tone. Naruto looked up at him and nodded his understanding. Kakashi smiled before turning to his two other students. Very well, we have 2 more days before Zabuza might try to attack. Today the training will be hardcore, and I want no complaints, Kakashi started with a tone that showed them not to discuss it. Sasuke smirked happily while Sakura lowered her gaze. Her legs and body were still itching from the constant training of trying to climb the tree. She hadn't taken a shower since she left the village and was afraid that she must stink and Sasuke wouldn't like her like this. Of course, Tsunami had offered to wash in their bathroom, but they only washed with buckets with water and not an actual bath. She had decided to wait until she returned to the village to have a proper bath, but the thought that she needed to train again and get more dirt in her body and hair made her second guess all this. She wanted to object but decided to be quiet and just listen to her sensei. Hearing no whining, Kakashi smiled under his mask and led his team to where they would train. While they walked, the team was quiet, and Naruto looked to be thinking about something, his hands behind his head. Naruto, when we introduced ourselves to Sensei, you said you wanted to restore your clan. You mean Senju clan? Sasuke suddenly asked. Naruto looked at him, slightly surprised, before turning his head to look forward again. Yes, I want to restore both the Senju and Uzumaki clan, he replied. Sasuke raised his eyebrows, and so did Sakura, who had never heard of the Uzumaki clan. Uzumaki clan? Never heard of it? Sasuke replied confused. He didn't think Naruto would be lying but wondered how he had never heard of it. Kakashi, on the other hand, sighed sadly at the mention of the Uzumaki clan. He still remembered Kushina's sadness every time the dead clan was brought up in discussion. Many times she had even blamed herself for what had happened, saying that if she had been there, she would be able to help them or at least save some of them. Kakashi remembers Kushina-san once told him, Rin, and Obito about her friend and older sister, Miko Uzumaki and Atara Uzumaki. None of these names ever came to the gates of Konoha, but Kushina-san had never lost hope that they were still out there. Uzumaki clan was destroyed during the Third Ninja War. Kyumo, Iwa, and Kiri decided to destroy my clan because they feared them, and because of their greed, Naruto said with a quiet cold tone that was different from the tone a minute ago. This tone wasn't spoken by the smiling Naruto but by someone who knows suffering. Sasuke looked perplexed that something similar that happened to him happened to Naruto as well. His eyes widened slightly in understanding. Now he understood why Naruto felt such a strong strive to become stronger and better, rebuilding the clan and making sure no one would dare to do the same ever again. I'm sorry for what happened to you, Naruto, he said before taking a deep breath. His thoughts went to his big brother, and he turned to look at the redhead again. My brother killed my whole clan, and I looked up to him more than anyone else. He had my father's love and admiration, but in the end, that wasn't enough. Sasuke started lowering his head. Naruto said nothing but patted his back. Everyone fell silent, they just kept walking. Despite the mood, Kakashi was glad that Sasuke was slowly opening up to the others, which would help him become a better person and probably fight and become stronger for a different cause. The sun shined through the trees, the marks around the tree from Sasuke training were there, the wind was flying around them, almost speaking to them. A squirrel went inside a tree the moment he noticed the people walking inside the forest. Kakashi looked around and decided that this place was good enough to train. He turned around to see Naruto focused on him. Sasuke looked slightly grim, so nothing new, and Sakura was giving Sasuke glances, and her face red like Naruto's hair. He sighed, bored of this behavior. Kakashi cleared his throat to gain their attention. Everyone turned to him. Very well, today, as I mentioned, we will train. First will be Sakura against me, 1 against 1, then Sasuke against me, and finally will be all 3 of you against me. Any objections? Kakashi asked with a high tone and strict. His face looked different and more demanding. No one said a whimper, and Kakashi's eyes smiled, glad that they had nothing against his fantastic training tactics. Sakura lowered her eyes and glanced at Sasuke, hoping he would say anything against it, but instead, he and Naruto had already walked behind them to give them space. Sakura looked back at her sensei and took all the courage she had, and grabbed a kunai from her small bag tightened to her hips. She aimed towards her sensei, and he just stood there. She took a deep breath and charged with low Genin speed towards him, kunai on her hand, ready to fight. Sakura didn't know what happened next, but the next thing she knew, her head was against the ground and her arms behind her back, a leg on her arm stopping the blood from moving and her arms slowly feeling numb and not mentioning the pain she felt in her arms. The dirt was all around her face, making it itchy. You need to get better and soon, Kakashi said strictly, already thinking of ways to make her train and not doom her group or someone else. He moved his foot away and walked a step back. Sakura still felt the pain but slowly stood up and walked, her head lowered in shame. Sasuke just walked forward, not glancing at her. Kakashi looked at his second student and decided to take this more seriously. Sasuke grabbed a kunai and rushed at his sensei with low Chunin speed. He jumped and threw a kick to his face. Kakashi blocked it with his arm before grabbing his leg and throwing him against a tree. The leaves started falling from the tree from the shake. Sasuke felt the pain in his back, but that didn't stop to do a few hand signs. Fire style, bullet shot. The fire was small but flew with medium Chunin speed. Kakashi was impressed by the speed of the jutsu before jumping to a tree to avoid it, but then he saw Sasuke behind him, ready to punch him. Kakashi quickly turned his head around to grab the fist with his hand. He added strength to his hand, and Sasuke started feeling pain in his knuckles. Ayaha! Sasuke screamed and tried to move his other hand when Kakashi added even more force in his hand, almost breaking his hand. Sakura watched in horror as their sensei hurt her Sasuke-kun while Naruto looked interested in how would the emo walk out of the situation. Sasuke glared at his sensei and clenched his teeth tightly before he pulled a kunai with a paper bomb from his small bag tightened to his right leg close to his thighs. Kakashi jumped back immediately, and so did Sasuke. The Jonin couldn't see the Genin from the smoke created by the explosion. Suddenly a giant shuriken came out of the smoke and was flying towards him. Kakashi dodged to his right when Sasuke pulled some strings, and the shuriken split into 4 pieces, and the parts flew around like arrows. Kakashi, still in midair, put his hand on the ground and used his body to avoid the projectile flying towards his torso when the blade suddenly turned to white smoke revealing a grinning Sasuke with a kunai with a paper bomb on his right hand. Catch this! Explosion! Naruto watched with a small smile, impressed by his plan, while Sakura watched with dread, afraid that her true love was hurt or, worse, killed. The smoke slowly cleared to reveal a standing Sasuke with his hands on his knees, breathing heavily. Sweat rolling down his face, trying desperately to catch his breath. He looked in front of him to see a crater and in the center was Kakashi lying on the ground, smoke coming from his clothes. Suddenly Sasuke felt a sharp object on his neck. The other Kakashi turned to a log. Sasuke sighed, knowing he still wasn't strong enough to fight against his sensei. Good strategy, Sasuke. I'm impressed, Kakashi whispered behind him. Sasuke managed a small smile before slowly walking away, knowing they had one more fight left. Kakashi turned around to see Naruto walking forward, followed behind by Sakura. Naruto cracked his knuckles on his face was a smile that Kakashi could have sworn he had seen before but couldn't quite put a finger where. He shrugged his shoulders, thinking that it was just his imagination. Now! I want all 3 of you to go all out against me. No holding back whatsoever, Kakashi stated with a stern tone showing that he was serious. His students nodded their heads one by one. Naruto glanced at Sasuke and Sakura. The Jonin started the match, and all 3 disappeared. Kakashi looked around but knew Naruto could probably hide their position. What's the plan? Sakura asked, looking at Sasuke. They were hiding in a tree. Naruto cleared his throat, gaining their attention. Listen closely. Kakashi kept waiting for their move. Despite not seeing them around, he still didn't pull out his book, knowing Naruto was already planning something against him. Suddenly multiple kunai came out of a bush, flying towards him. The Jonin jumped to his right and suddenly felt water beneath his foot. Strange. Suddenly he heard 2 voices in front of him. Fire style, shining star. Earth style, prison ground. Kakashi saw the ground rising around him. He tried to move his foot, but the water wasn't letting him move an inch. The ground around left an opening in front of him and blocked in all the other directions. The fire jutsu made contact with Kakashi and exploded, destroying the prison made of stone. Sasuke and Naruto jumped from the bush, looking at the result. They smiled before Kakashi suddenly appeared behind them with a kunai at their throats. You should never leave your back unguarded. Same goes for you, Kakashi-sensei. Before Kakashi could understand what Naruto meant, both Sasuke and Naruto exploded. He put his hands in front of his face and jumped away in time to get minimum damage. The Jonin hit a tree only to see Sakura cutting a rope, making a giant log with a pointy end coming towards him. Kakashi managed to jump away when he felt something. He felt strange. He felt tired. Extremely tired. Before he could think of what was happening, Sasuke jumped from a tree, ready to stab him. Kakashi pulled out his kunai to block him. The Uchiha glared at his Jonin when Kakashi grabbed his hand and elbowed him in the stomach, causing Sasuke to vomit. Kakashi was about to attack him again when suddenly Sasuke exploded in strings that tightened him around the tree. The tree then revealed paper bombs everywhere. They're getting better. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura were standing where the fight began. They saw Kakashi walking towards them with a smile behind his mask. "You have improved, my students," he stated. Sasuke smiled while Naruto looked to be deep in thoughts but still happy. Sakura jumped from happiness. Night. Naruto was sleeping alone on his bed. The seal on his stomach started growing again. It turned red like fire. Naruto saw himself standing beneath an ocean, his foot standing just a bit below the surface of the sea, his body upside down. Despite being in the water, he still could breathe. His eyes saw an island below the surface, the destroyed buildings clear to him. Bodies of unknown people floating around the sea, near the destroyed houses and buildings. Suddenly, a man wearing white robes reaching from his neck to his foot, had the Uzumaki symbol in the chest. The man had a strange staff on his right hand, his eyes a deep purple and white hair. His bear long reaching his shoulders, his hair had grown to his waist. On top of his head was a strange small crown looking like waves of the sea. "Who are you?" The young Uzumaki asked. He couldn't feel this person, despite trying. It was almost like he wasn't even there. The old Uzumaki smiled, a genuine smile. Naruto thought. "Is good to meet you, young Uzumaki. My name is Roku Uzumaki, the first one." That's it for part 5. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.